So the Lakers, in my opinion, will be fine. They lost the first game against the Suns, and everybody kind of freaked out and was like, "Oh, here we go, it's the downfall of the Lakers." It's LeBron. It's the way that they've always done it in series. I mean, I watched LeBron too much to know that he is not going to lose the first or second game and not win the rest of the series if he has the better team, which is, in my opinion, they have the better team. So I'm not worried about them whatsoever. The way that they're playing and everything. I mean, we saw game two was way different than game one. Game two, Anthony Davis decided to show up and not let DeAndre Ayton base him over for the whole game. So that was obviously an improvement. But overall, I mean, it's just that's how he's always played his playoff series. I mean, if you watch him with the Cavaliers, if you watched him with the Miami Heat, they would lose the first or second game even of the series and then immediately bounce back and win the series 4-2 or win the series, 4-1. So I don't have a doubt in my mind that the Lakers are going to advance past the Suns. I like the Suns. I would love for the Suns to make it past the Lakers. I just don't think that they have the firepower and the basically the players down the stretch to be able to answer for LeBron and AD. And when that Lakers team wants to, they can play the best defense in the league. So it's one of those where I'm not worried whatsoever about how they're doing. And I'm not, exactly. He always plays in unnecessarily close series, and that's just the way he's always been. I remember back to when, it was for a minute, every Chicago Bulls fan was like, oh my God, we might actually beat the Miami Heat. When Derrick Rose hit that game winner and walked off, and everybody was like, we have a chance, we're 2-2. And then I think we lost the next two. So I'm not surprised that they lost the first game. He always does that. It's almost like he's gauging the series.
Game? Yeah, it's exactly what I was gonna say.
Exactly. 100%. That's how it feels every single time. It's like a feel out. Like he plays the game, sees how the flow is going to be, see what their offense is doing, what they're trying to do. And then it's like the next game, it's like, all right, we're the Lakers. Let's start playing well again. I'm LeBron James. We're going to start winning. And that's just kind of how it goes. So I'd have no doubt in my mind they're going to win this series. Like I said, I would love for the Suns to make some noise and actually, win the next one maybe, and give the Lakers a run for their money, because at least then it makes it a fun series. But I really do think that I would be surprised if the Suns win another game. If not, if they do, it's only going to be one more game. So, and it's going to be one of their home games.
And didn't Chris Paul get hurt too? Is that something that I saw?
Yeah, he was on the sideline icing his shoulder. Yeah. Something about that too. So it's one of those where, again, it's the Lakers, it's LeBron James. They're going to be fine. I'm not, first round LeBron James does not get knocked out when he has a team as talented as he does with AD and Drummond. And when Drummond wants, he can rebound over anybody on the Suns roster. When AD wants, he can defend anybody on that roster. And when LeBron wants, he can be LeBron. So, it's one of those where I'm not worried whatsoever about them. I am worried though about the Clippers, because the Clippers are just being the Clippers and doing Clippers things and just trying with everything in their power to do everything possible to not win, even though they always seem like the better team, which is just the way that it goes with them. They're always like, they always have the ridiculous amount of talent and then just don't back it up. And that's the way that the Clippers have always been. And yeah, just Clipper things. I mean, what do you have to say about that? Yeah. So they're gonna do, by the way, Dylan, that's the Nets. You're looking at.
Yes, it is. I threw that up very quickly.
The Clippers one, I think, is oh, maybe I didn't send you the Clippers image. That's all right.
Oh wow, look whose fault it is now.
Yeah, I know, it's my fault now, straight up. So anyways, yeah, the Clippers they're just going to be the Clippers. They're just not going to win games that they should. They're not going to play as well as they need to in order to, to dominate like they should. I mean, you have two of the best defensive players in the league, two of the best two-way players overall in the league. Kawhi Leonard, when he wants, is probably the best player in the league when he wants. And I'm not saying that he is the best. We can argue about Durant, LeBron, whatever you want to say, but he could be one of the best if he wants to be. And he just doesn't end up doing it down the stretch enough in order to make me, which is funny because when he was with the Raptors, I mean, that Raptors team was really good, don't get me wrong, and they were also going against an injury prone or an injured Warriors team. But
Right.
I mean, they were really good. They definitely deserved to be in the championship, and they deserved to win it. And Kawhi was a big reason why. It's just sad because I don't know what happened when he went to the Clippers, but him and Paul George just they mix so well during the regular season, and then when it comes to the playoffs, they just can't put it together. I don't know what it is, but it's just bad, and they can never finish down the stretch. So it's just it's one of those where I'm just like I can't say that the Clippers are ever. It's how I feel about the Bucks too, is that I just until I see it, I can't I can't believe that they're going to do anything, make any noise, or actually be good this year. It's the
Don't
same.
want to get your hopes up too high too easily.
Yeah, every single year it's that way. So it's just like oh, this is going to be the year for the Clippers. They're starting to put it together, and then they don't show up in the playoffs. I don't know why that is the case. Yeah, and I'm sorry, but that leads me into my next point too, which he's saying I've been a Giannis fan since Giannis came in the league. I told my friend will vouch for me. I told him on draft day when Giannis got drafted that kid was going to be good because I'd watched a lot of him in Greece, and the thing with Giannis and the Bucks is that down the stretch when you need points and you need a shot, they don't. I mean, Middleton's their best option. And that's, I'm not saying Middleton's a bad player by any means. He's a good player. It's just one of those where, unfortunately, Giannis doesn't have a shot. Like we watched LeBron drain that three, down the stretch. Yeah, I mean Drew Holiday, but like, ideally you'd want Drew Holiday and Middleton to be your 2 and 3, and you want Giannis being able to make that shot. But when Giannis doesn't have the shooting capabilities of some of the other players in the league, like a Durant or a LeBron even, or, any of these guys, it's hard for them to make shots, down the stretch. Even if they're down a little bit, it's hard to come back when, they need to start making a couple threes. It's just the Bucks are just unfortunately they're just such a well put together team, but they just don't put it together. It's like they're a well put together team that can't put it together. I don't like
Just executing.
yeah, it's
Good
just
on
it's just
paper.
exactly. I mean, every year Giannis is like ridiculous, and you're talking about how basically he's one of the best players in the league, if not, again up there as the best. And then he comes to the playoffs, and it's one of those where when the team focuses defensively on um, just Giannis, and then you have basically Middleton and Drew and all of them going. I mean, that's just unfortunately that's the way that it goes. Is there's just not enough support around there, and then like I said, Giannis just isn't. He just isn't trustworthy enough to make shots down the stretch without driving or get trying to go to the free throw line or which is fine and can be viable, but it just hasn't. And I think part of that is because they don't have guys that can stretch the floor as well as some of the other teams in their conference and even just in the NBA in general. So it's one of those where it's unfortunately they're always just kind of good enough to be in the top 3 in the East, if not the best in the East, and then they just can't put it together or do it enough in the playoffs to make a difference. And they're up 2-0 right now in the Miami Heat, but I suspect the Miami Heat are going to come back and even that series. It's one of those where it could go into a shootout into the 7 game 7 where we're trying to figure out who's going to be the better team. And in my opinion, I trust the Heat to make shots down the stretch more. So unless Giannis and the Bucks come out and close out the series quickly, if they let the Heat come back into it, I just would be afraid that the Heat would be able to finish them out.
Yeah,
So
did I forget what was the most recent blowout? Was that did the Heat get slapped? Someone got slapped in like a game I think that happened yesterday.
I mean the Nets beat the Celtics pretty bad.
That was it. Yeah.
That's probably what
Okay.
you're thinking of.
Oh wow, what a great transition! I don't know how I'm so good at
What
that.
a great transition, Dylan, into the Nets, who are just playing ridiculous. I mean, the Nets are as good as advertised, and that's what we've seen at least in the first 2. Oh yeah, the Bucks did. Yeah, the
46?
Bucks did dominate in that game. Like I said, that's my only fear is that if they do get past the Miami Heat, I don't know if I trust the Bucks going, deep into the playoffs because I just don't know. They do this where they look really good and then somebody figures out defensively how to stop, Giannis enough and basically not allow him to get a shot. And then when that happens, you're trusting Middleton and that team to spread the ball and they just don't have the shooters to be able to do it. And Giannis doesn't have unfortunately, Giannis doesn't have the shooting ability that like a Durant or LeBron does, where they could just pull up from three, and so that threat's there, so then they can get their drive when they need it. So, it's like I said, it's one of those where I wish that the Bucks would be better because I'm a big Giannis fan and I always have been. I have a Giannis jersey; he's one of the only basketball jerseys I have in my closet. It's unfortunate. I just wish that they were better. And granted, yeah, they've looked really good these two games, but like I said, I just am worried that potentially if they don't close out the Heat fast enough, the Heat might be able to get back into the series, and this might go to a game 7. So we'll see. But anyways, to go back to the Nets, yeah, yeah. But the thing about playing in the regular season is like the Lakers looked like a joke in the regular season, but the Lakers are going to be fine in the playoffs. Like it's just that's the way it goes. Like the Lakers, people were like, "Oh, they're done this year. They're over with." They're playing for the 8 seed and whatever and 7 seed. But then now I'm like, yeah, the Lakers are probably going to come out of the West. Like it's just that's the way that it goes. The Lakers figure it out. I just don't know if the Bucks can do that in the regular season.
Side note, where's Rondo now? Is he on the Nets?
He's on the Clippers, which the Clippers
that's right. Okay.
He was supposed to playoff Rondo was supposed to help make the Clippers be better and be better in the playoffs, and guess how well that's working out.
Yeah, not so great.
Granted, Rondo actually played pretty well last game. It's just that the Clippers are the Clippers. So, but anyways, transition back to the Nets. The Nets are just as good as advertised. They're ridiculous. They're going to be ridiculous. They're again, basically these games, they're just gaining experience. That's going to take them basically deeper into the playoffs. So I don't think that the Nets are going to be knocked out, in my opinion, of the playoffs until maybe the championship. I think honestly, if I'm looking at the playoffs right now, something tells me it's going to be probably Nets, Lakers, and Lakers being there again might not help, might not make people happy, but in my opinion, I feel like that's just the way that this is trending. Is I feel like the Lakers will figure it out in every series, and then come down to basically where the Nets, I think, will beat them in the finals because the Nets are just overpowering, and it's one of those where the only detriment that the Nets have that might hurt them from advancing is the fact that they just haven't played together enough, and that we talked about that before, where they've only been healthy for 8 games in the entire regular season that they played together. So it's one of those where maybe an experience with each other hurts them enough to be defeated by either the Eastern Conference champion team or in the finals. It's just one of those though where I don't really suspect that that's going to happen, just because the Nets are just too talented and all of them are shooters. It's one of those where even if they don't have the experience, we're playing with each other, and they kind of know how where you're going to be, and when we're running up the court and stuff like that. At the very minimum, they're all just great shooters and scorers. So that's the name of the game right now, obviously in the league, with there being less and less defense really being played. And I don't think any NBA fan's going to really argue with me on that, but there are great defensive players in the league. I'm not saying that's not the case, but there is less and less defense and more scoring. And when you have 3 of the best scorers in the entire league, if not the 3 best scorers in the league, that's just going to happen. You're going to be able to make things happen regardless of how well you play together.
Yeah, so. And I haven't really followed the Nets specifically, but it's like, I know that one of their concerns obviously was like chemistry and everything. Like, is that starting to figure itself out from what you've seen so far, or is that still like a big issue that they have to worry about?
No, I think it's one of those where it's going to figure itself out as they play more. It's just they're too good to not they're too good to have bad like chemistry issues. Like they just, because they're all shooters. And then the other thing too is you have some playmakers where Kyrie is a point guard, so he's fine distributing the ball. James Harden has been basically playing as a point guard for most of his career. So he's okay with also bringing up the ball and everything. And so it's one of those where I think that overall they're going to be fine and they're going to figure it out. If you want to pull up the picture. Yeah, there you go. So I think they'll be fine. I think their chemistry issues they'll figure out and they'll start to play better. And I think by the time you get to the Eastern Conference Finals or even the finals, after that, I think the Nets look, as good as possible, because I think they're just going to gain experience playing with each other, unless there's an injury, unless there's like something that happens, an injury, just having a bad night and they just argue with each other, which I can't foresee happening, but who knows, honestly. So unless there's a bad night or something like that, I expect them to be in the finals, and I expect them to basically be the heavy favorite against. It doesn't even matter who they're playing against.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then
this series.
yeah, and then the next series that's kind of intriguing as well is the Trailblazers versus the Nuggets. So the Trailblazers, as much as I love the Trailblazers, and I always think that they're going to be in a series no matter what, based on just Damian Lillard and his shooting ability. I just the Trailblazers. I love Damian Lillard he's one of my favorite players again in the league. It's just not going to happen. It hurts watching the Trailblazers every year because every year they're just so good, and you love Damian Lillard because he's awesome and he plays so well. But they just will not be able to. They just don't have enough talent. That's plain and simple. They just don't have enough. They won't be able to get it. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes in the league. It's a star-driven league. We all know that. And when Damian Lillard, is your best star, and yeah, I mean, what's his name? CJ McCollum is, a good running mate and everything. It's just, yeah, exactly. They're just that's the
That
way
is a
that it
great
is.
analogy.
Yeah, they're the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals always had AJ. Andy Dalton and AJ Green were fun to watch, and they were good enough to get in the playoffs. But they're not going to do anything. Like it's just not going to happen. That's not how it works. The Trailblazers just aren't good enough. They just don't have enough talent. I almost wish Damian Lillard left to go to a team that was better, but he's too good. He's too loyal, and he's staying in Portland. And unless they're able to get him like a second big superstar, it's just not going to happen for Damian Lillard. And it's unfortunate because he's going to be one of those talents that just kind of he's going to be like one of those players that's like the best player of the era that never made it, that never made it to the finals or never won a championship.
But he's got like a really great situation too, though, at the same time, right? Because like he doesn't have to worry. I feel like the pressure is almost removed, and it's almost like a bad thing, I guess. But obviously, I think he's still got the Supermax, right? So obviously, he's paid. He's very well paid. He's fine. And if you're not pursuing that ring and leaving, I feel like if you leave and you go somewhere, you're immediately expected to have results. And like, it's the harder choice to stick with a team that may not get the chance to win, but at the same time, the fans still love you for staying there, but they also don't expect you to win a championship, which is kind of nice in a certain way. So I feel like he just gets to do his own thing. And I'm sure if you're like, an NBA level competitor, that's got to grind on you. But like, I feel he feels like he's in a low stress situation because of that. There's not really a lot of losing except when they get knocked out in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's because like I don't know if they really expect, like you said, I don't really think that they expect too much of them.
Yeah.
Because they know that the Trailblazers are just basically kind of at a disadvantage already as far as talent goes. Because really, it's you can say Nurkic is there and everything, but overall, that team is basically Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum makes some shots here and there to help out. That's basically it. That's the way it boils down. When you watch most of their games where they lose by a little bit, it's just because they just don't have enough firepower. They just don't have enough defense, enough firepower to deal with these teams. And it's unfortunate. And yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think there's something to be said about him, staying with the team and the pressure not being as great when, you're with a team that's really not expected to do or make, go as far as other
not
teams
a contender
in the league.
necessarily.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate because it's just like I said, he's very clearly one of the best players in the league and has been, probably deserves to be in like the top 10 players in the league, maybe even the top 5 every year. It's just his teams are just never good enough, and it's not his fault. I mean, half the time the dude's just shooting from the freaking logo and draining it. And what is he supposed to do? I mean, like, and the other thing too with the Trailblazers, they always have an incredibly well fought series. And and like they'll win in like a game winner, or Damian Lillard hits like like you saw last year or the year before with the Clippers where he hit the game winner over Paul George. And you're always like, oh, that's great. That's wow, what an incredible victory. But then it's one of those where they go to the next series and they're kind of drained energy wise because they just gave everything they had into the previous series to win it. So it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how they play out. And so I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think Denver figures this series out and ends up winning probably in game 6. I would assume it probably goes 4-2. And then Denver moves on, and we'll see how far they can go from there. I don't really know if Denver has championship they are definitely good enough to make it to the championship. In my opinion, they've got the MVP of the league in Jokic, so they're definitely good enough to make it. I just don't know. I don't know if they'll be able to overcome like the Lakers or a team like that ends up getting there. Really, you have to overcome the Lakers to have a chance. I think the Nuggets could handle most, if not all, the other teams in the West. I think it's just the Lakers that would be an issue. So, whenever they do meet in the playoffs, inevitably, which I think is going to happen, if
Right.
they get past the Lakers, then I could see them going into the finals. But the problem is that then again, you have to get past the Nets probably, who are going to be there at the end in the finals. So, and the Nets are not the last year's, Miami Heat, where the Heat were just drained and didn't have the energy to play, basically.
And
So
injured.
yeah, they were injured. They weren't, they were run down. Jimmy was literally your last drop of energy to win like 1 or 2 games out of that series. It was just
Really
it was like
entertaining games though, especially
yeah,
Jimmy Butler.
yeah.
Those were great.
Yeah, the ones with Jimmy Butler was just playing like Jimmy Butler can when he wants to. It was amazing. It's just he ultimately at the end of the day can't do it, 48 minutes a game every game. So that's
Yeah.
just the way that goes.